Everything that's happening here in America today happened in Germany in the 1930s. Everything. What happened when the election results came in and Hitler did not have the power that he thought that he was going to accumulate? He burned the Reichstag. When he burned the Reichstag, he blamed it upon all of his political enemies, rounded them up, and Germany was in his power literally overnight. Same thing is happening today.
Comparisons: Nazi Germany, Berlin, the Reichstag, 1933, the United States of America, Oklahoma City, 1995.
It seems to me, Tony, that it was a carbon copy probably of what took place in Germany. I mean, it's funny, I sensed it right away. I've heard other comments since then too that explained the Reichstag and how it was planted and how it was positively planted by the Nazis, and so then Hitler could come to power and say, look, we'll have to take care of them. And I also remembered, and I can't give you the quote directly, what Hitler said, that finally here we got a civilized nation and now they don't have any of the guns. And isn't it a wonderful thing that we have done? That's a poor paraphrase of what he had said, but that's the point. So you're right. And then when we finally heard that there were the three bombs that were placed and 2 detonated and 1 didn't detonate and so forth, it's unbelievable. And we can see when we hear how they're turning on our militia and how they're calling it a right-wing extremist, and we got to tell them, and I get so upset. It's hard for me to think straight about it because I get emotional.
You see some comparison between those who control our government today and those who control the government under Adolf Hitler?
Oh, exactly. The bombing to me is the exact same thing as what happened in 1933 in Germany, the Reichstag fire, which was set to tighten up everything and take total control. Same thing here.
And how about the legislation that you see following that Clinton is asking for? Is it similar to what Hitler asked for? Is that what you're saying? Identical.
Some of it's word for word from what I understand. And I've actually heard some of it's even worse, if that's possible.
The Reichstag burning in 1933 and the Oklahoma bombing in 1995. Are they similar?
Exactly similar, unless there's another reason I can think of why they're not. And I've been racking my brain. I don't see any reason why they're not similar, because there's a great beneficiary for this incident. It's like an accident in an insurance policy. Somebody dies, somebody collects, and they're collecting.
Hitler was a great orator. Bill Clinton is pretty good himself. Do you see Bill Clinton as America's Hitler?
No, not really. I find it hard to believe that he understands or really has the insight into what's taking place. I believe he's a tool for other men that are using him for their purposes. I believe he's basically a spokesman. I don't believe he's an idea man.
On the back page, we also publish what you won't see in any other newspaper, the seismograph from the Energy Center of the University of Oklahoma City in Norman. And down here, the seismograph from the Omniplex in Oklahoma City, close to the blast site. Both of these seismographs, by the way, we got there just in time because the FBI seized these seismograph reports shortly after we obtained them. What you see on both of these seismograph reports are 2 explosions, not 1. Proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Witnesses also report 2 explosions, not 1. But you don't see that in the press because they don't want you to know it. Also in our research, every explosives expert we've talked to said ammonium nitrate will not do the damage that you see in Oklahoma City under any circumstances, no matter how you shape it, no matter how many pounds you have. Ammonium nitrate is a cratering explosive or a pushing charge, much like black powder. The coroner's report, he seems to be the only one telling the truth, says that most of the survivors were near the north wall. That's the front of the building. They weren't blown in. The front of the building wasn't blown in. They were blown out through cinder block into the street, and the whole front of the building was blown across the street into the building across the way, which means that the major explosions that did the most damage were inside the building, not in some Ryder truck parked outside, which, by the way, they just can't ever be original. The story's always the same. World Trade Center, yellow Ryder truck, ammonium nitrate fertilizer. Oklahoma City, yellow Ryder truck. Why is Ryder the rental company of choice for terrorists?
Is it true that all the AFP employees in the
FBI and BATF employees, except for clerks, were not in the building?
all out of the building?
First time that anybody can remember that they were all ever out of the building. The only agent who was killed was a Secret Service agent. Guess who he was? He was the only one who wasn't told to leave.
Right.
He's one of Bill Clinton's bodyguards. How many does that make?
5.
Huh?
8. 28. Makes all 8.
Makes a whole bunch.
Terry, you've seen on television, as millions of people across this country have, the second American atrocity committed during the Clinton administration. You've read the magazines, you've seen the books, there's reams of information. Who did it? Well, the bottom line, I mean, who do you think is responsible? Is it Timothy McVeigh and some right-wing extremist, or what's your analysis?
Well, my analysis is, first of all, I think it's a tragic event that bombing had to occur, or did occur. The media has portrayed it to be white supremacist, etc. My opinion of that, if it was white supremacists that was responsible for it, that they would have bombed a synagogue or a mosque. So that, to me, leaves out the white supremacist. All the evidence that I've been reading and the information that I've been receiving seems to be pointing back to the government as being the one that's responsible for that bombing.
I think America today has a general distrust of government, and when somebody even suggests the possibility that government may have had something to do with it, I do think that there's an inclination of a lot of people in America that are going to wonder, and that wonder is probably going to be bent against the government.
Is this the same government that dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the Japanese had asked for conditional surrender?
Well, the question was asked one time, should we believe the government? Well, I pose the other way. Has the government ever told the truth? And you can go down through history and you'll find time and time again the government has always lied about everything of any substantial consequence in America. And we've witnessed this, and I think that one way or the other, the truth is going to come out.
The bombing at Oklahoma City, do you think this was done by some group of patriots or some, like a loner like Lee Harvey Oswald? Or?
Oh, absolutely not. I never thought that for one moment.
And what do you figure did happen there, and who's responsible?
The minute I heard about the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City, the first reaction I had, without even any conscious thought, was the federal government. It was just an automatic, like when you kick your knee, it just goes in. It was there for me.
You mean those who control the federal government?
Absolutely.
And who benefited from this?
Who benefits from this?
Yes.
The federal government, the Fed. I know that they've been wanting to get this anti-terrorist bill passed for quite some time. And the way they do things is that they create the crisis, and then they get the American people all in chaos and believing that, oh yes, save us, save us, save us, we're on our knees and please help us. So it works for them, and this is what they keep doing. And as long as they keep doing this and it works, they knew that they could not abolish the Posse Comitatus Act without
finding a reason and a justification for this. And the only way that they can do that is to create the crisis. And when they do that, then the American people will come back and say, help us, save us. So I'm real clear on it. I've never thought for one second that it had anything to do with, just a weirdo or a wacko or a talk radio or any of these things.
So this is Ordo ab Chaos, order out of chaos. That's their program.
Well, I don't think it's order out of chaos, but just keep chaos going. And while the chaos is going and the American people are starved, in other words, they create the crisis and will tell you that, gee, we have to stop the crime. The crime is rampant. It's terrible. We have to stop this terrorism. And golly, what we need is, and the American people say, yes, yes, help us. And,
They're goaded by the media, right? And the media is managed.
Oh, absolutely. Not even a doubt in my mind whatsoever about that.
I find that hard to believe that one truck could have done all that damage. That seems totally implausible. Some people tell me that they believe the government or factions within the federal government did this. I find that hard to believe too, but it seems like they're the only ones that are benefiting from this right now. It's good PR for them. It's a good chance to run things through Congress that would have never gone through before.
People in the, should I say this?
Yes.
In the government. That's who I think did it.
We have seen this bombing occur immediately after the introduction of the Clinton Omnibus Counter-Terrorist Act of 1995.
Well, this is just, I feel that there are going to be more Oklahoma cities or equivalents.
Is the government and the managed media propagandizing the people like Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler did in Germany in 1933?
Without a doubt. I mean, absolutely. You cannot get anything except OJ on the majority of the stations. With everything that's taking place in this nation, and the only thing we have to watch is OJ? I mean, come on.
The problem that we are faced with is that here we have the government doing their own investigation, and if they are responsible for it, we'll never know the truth, just like in the Kennedy assassination.
In other words, you're saying that the primary suspect, the prime suspect in this case, which is the President of the United States and Janet Reno, are those who are in charge of the investigation.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Do you know in the crime bill that it's illegal to store food for over 6 months' supply? What are you going to do with all the Mormons that store food? Are all of them now criminals? It's the confiscation laws where they can take fertilizer. I mean, this was set up long before Oklahoma City took place. Everything has been known that was going to take place, and people are not so stupid that they don't understand it. Public Law 7277, which turns the power of the Army not only of the United States, but of the Soviet Union over to the Russians, over to the United Nations. When you can call the Presidio and get the Gorbachev Foundation and know that Mikhail Gorbachev is instrumental in closing our military bases, we got a problem.
I'm amazed. I will talk about Waco, and I will understand when they said the kids. We had 19 kids we killed in Oklahoma City. 17 were killed at Waco. No one seemed to care about that. And when I talk about Waco, I get comments like they deserved it. What do I say? What do you mean they deserved it? A 5-year-old child deserves to be incinerated to death like that. What did she? And by the way, what was the charge? What was the Waco charge? And what's wrong with us? Why aren't we Americans thinking straight? It's beyond me. It is absolutely beyond me. And we talk about compounds. Waco wasn't a compound. It was a Davidian church. But, you know, you leave it to the press. They call it a compound and a cult. It wasn't a cult. It's a religion. And Koresh, he used to walk in town all the time. He was liked in the town. They didn't really dislike those people. They were minding their own business. And what was the charge? My point is that, and forgive the rambling, but I get so upset about it. I get very stimulated, and I can just see that people they've been so brainwashed. They just have no understanding whatsoever of what's taking place in this precious country of ours. No understanding whatsoever.
I think it's curious that the night before the bombing, all of the BATF and federal agencies were moved out of the building as assisted by building management and as attested to by building management. So when the bomb went off on April the 19th, there were no federal agencies, especially BATF, in the building. And I think it's also curious that the Waco massacre investigation paperwork was in that building. And it's pretty obvious, I guess, to all that the bomb blew outward. When you look at the building, the pictures of the building and the footage of the building, the bomb blew outward, not inward. So the truck didn't blow it up. The second set of bombs was inside, as attested to by University of Oklahoma seismographs. I think it was 9:02:04 a.m. and 9:02:14 a.m. The second set of bombs went off in a very tightly controlled series of explosions about 10 seconds after the first set. I think it's curious that the media is keeping this undercover, under wraps. Let's talk about it. How come?
Yes, sir, in the back.
In 1974, the English introduced a law called the Prevention of Terrorism Act. They were having trouble getting the votes, and a bomb went off in a village in Ireland, killed 33 people.
Yeah, isn't it funny how every time they introduce one of these things, something like that happens?
Next day they had the vote and it passed.
Yeah.
But before that happened, they didn't have the votes, and I just wondered if you had any comment on that. It's been proven of late that was an MI5 operation too.
What I believe is that what happened in Oklahoma City wasn't the product of a couple of deranged people. First place, deranged people can't think that logically, keep it secret for that long, and pull it off that well. Not only that, but the extent of the damage, according to experts, and I mean experts, our biggest expert that we've talked to, that we talk about in this paper, is a brigadier general retired in, I'm not going to tell you what service he served in, but he was in charge. That'll be printed in the next paper. Once we know that is distributed far and wide, then he can't be hurt. So we can't reveal his identity just yet, but it will be printed in the next paper. He was in charge of the explosives research laboratory for one of our branches of the armed services for 26 years. He has experimented with and supervised the production and implementation of explosives and bombs for his whole career. He educated me personally into what happened in Oklahoma City. First, he said there was at least 2 explosions, one outside the building, which produced a crater and probably nothing more than a few broken windows. He said it did not have to be in a Ryder truck, or a truck at all. It could have been in a car. Nobody really knows what it was in. They say it was in a Ryder truck. But strangely, the guy who just delivered the UPS packages to that building and left at 8:58 on the dot said that there was no large vehicle of any kind parked in front of the building, and the bomb went off at 9:02, 4 minutes later. Now, whether somebody had time to park a Ryder truck or any kind of a big truck that they say that the bomb was in those 4 minutes is subject to debate. But he said that the columns in the building, and there are 4 rows of 11 columns each. These columns are huge columns, steel reinforced concrete, which he told to me is called a hard target, which means you can't explode a bomb in the front of the building and bring those columns down. They're hard targets. He said there had to be at least one other explosive in the building of a type that could direct its energies to the base of those columns and bring them down, because they all came down leveled at ground level. Now, because they were leveled at ground level, he said that the only way that that could be done is if individual charges were placed to go off at the same time at the base of those columns. And they could either be satchel charges or what he called, what did he call them?
Cutting charges.
Well, they are cutting charges, but that's not the word that he used.
Shape charges.
Shape charges is exactly what he said. So, and there it is. At least 2 bombs. No doubt about it.
How far apart were the explosions? In a matter of just seconds or?
10 seconds.
According to these seismographs, there's about 10 seconds. Could be 8 seconds, but no more than 10 seconds. All the witnesses there report they heard 2 distinct explosions. The press isn't reporting it. The government doesn't say there was 2 explosions, but everybody who heard it said there was 2 explosions.
I did a TV interview with this guy. I saw it on TV. The guy pointed it out on TV.
Yeah. So you might want to ask the communist news networks why they're hiding these. Why are they hiding the witness testimony? Why are they hiding the fact that a fertilizer bomb could not possibly have done that damage? I believe that what happened was the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany when they burned the Reichstag. Who benefits? What does it promote? Tyranny.
Who has the reason?
If this omnibus counterterrorism bill passes Congress, they can say the Constitution Party is a terrorist group, round us all up and throw us in jail. Now, you think that's really something? They could do the same thing to the Republican Party and to the National Rifle Association and the Boy Scouts. It gives the president dictatorial powers to name any group he wishes with no parameters whatsoever as a terrorist organization. Without review.
How about any individual?
Suspends habeas corpus and a lot of other things, which is exactly what Hitler did. He burned the Reichstag. He named all of his opposition political enemies as the terrorist who burned the Reichstag, rounded them all up, and took over Germany. And since the Reichstag was burned, there was no more Congress. All in one fell swoop. And I'm telling you right now that Comrade Clinton is fixing to do the same thing.
A question?
Yes, sir.
What's the status of the Conference of States? Where's that at now?
The Conference of States is dead, and I'm going to tell you who killed it. It was the hour of the time and the Constitution Party.
Right. Bottom line, who benefits?
Well, I think the government does, and Clinton, since H.R. 390 came out in February, the counter-terrorist bill, which calls for complete dictatorial powers for the president to decide who is a terrorist and who isn't, without any due process, habeas corpus. They can literally take you off to jail without anyone knowing about it and declare you a terrorist.
Is this America's Reichstag?
Yes, no question about it. Yes, it is. This is no question about it. Honest to God, it's almost as if President Clinton had his speech all orchestrated, like he was all prepared because it came so quickly after this bombing. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yes, it is, and there'll be others. There'll be more violence too. I'm sure of it.
If there was one individual in the United States who has benefited more than any other from this, who would that be?
Well, I would say it's definitely President Clinton and Janet Reno.
Who does this serve? Does this serve the purpose of the New World Order? Does this serve the patriots? Does this serve the American people? Does this serve the militia? Who does this serve? What does it serve? And it's very easy to figure out. It's not that difficult. And if it works to progress to the New World Order, which is the real goal of what's going on, then you kind of narrow the field as to who's in back of it and who's promoting this and how they're doing it. I have absolutely no doubt at all that this serves the New World Order, because I really believe that it's a question of taking the money from the American people and getting rid of it and getting us down to our knees. I consider America to be the last bastion of freedom, of liberty, and in God we trust.
Our enemy is a common enemy, regardless of where you're coming from. We got the same enemies. If you're a far leftist, unless you're one of them, we're liable to be sharing a cell someday. So we better find out what we got in common and take on Big Brother.
If it was known tomorrow morning that the CIA, the ISA, the Clinton administration was in some way directly responsible for the bombing in Oklahoma City, do you think any of the major news media would publicize it?
No, I don't figure they will. No. It's up to us, the people, the rank and file, the grassroots. And whether or not they all, some people, unfortunately, unless they hear it on the tube, they don't believe it. But that's where we come in. There's a army of patriots out there that are on R&R. They haven't joined the battle yet. And I'm speaking of the churches of America. Those that claim the name of Jesus Christ, they're still on the sidelines for the most part. And I would say to them, get your battle gear on, your armor, as Ephesians tells us to do, and join the battle. Get down on the floor of the Colosseum like they did 2,000 years ago. Unless that happens, it's all over. We're going into total slavery.
Clinton is talking about transferring, our religious rights from God as we know God, whether he be a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian, to the gods of government.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's not even the gods of government. Government is the God. And this was part of the thing was behind Waco. If you paid attention to what, and I always call him Clintonocchio, that's my name for him, because I can't really bring myself to call him president. I really can't. If you listen to what he had to say after what happened, that Holocaust in Waco, that absolute slaughter, that genocide, that murder, that massacre, we don't even need a jury system anymore. We don't need anybody but Clintonocchio, because he became the judge, the jury, and the executioner. He made statements like David Koresh killed those children. He murdered those children. And he also made it very clear that this was going to be a lesson to all of us. If we really practice, he didn't use these words exactly, but he let us know in no uncertain terms that if we exercised our rights of religion and we joined any kind of off the mainstream type of thing, if we exercised our freedom to believe and to do our own thing in that respect, that this too could happen to us.
In other words, getting rid of all opposition to the president.
Absolutely. Bingo. Just opposition, in other words, any kind of dissident at all.
So, in other words, you're saying this has the signature of a CIA bomb.
Well, those are your words. Let's just talk about it. Why are they hiding it, Let's drag it all out. I think it's curious that all the BATF guys were out of the building, including all their records and files and everything else, and they weren't even there for the explosion. Why'd they miss the party? Weren't they invited?